"Obey us." That's what Sergeant Vance whispered as he locked the weapons vault door. 4 men surrounded her in the darkness. One grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise. One pulled out his phone camera, light, blinding. One reached for her belt buckle. And the 4th laughed. "Scream all you want. No one's coming." They didn't know her name. They didn't check her file. They saw a small woman alone and saw opportunity. 60 seconds later, one was choking on blood. One had a shattered wrist. One was crying on the floor. And one was running straight into a trap she'd been building for 3 weeks. Before we show you how a 28-year-old Navy SEAL sniper dismantled a predator ring that had terrorized women for 4 years, hit subscribe like this video and drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. Master Chief Petty Officer Mara Sinclair stepped off the transport helicopter with 1 duffel bag and a personnel file that said she was nobody. The Nevada desert wind hit her face like an oven door opening. Heat waves rippled off the concrete. The Joint Special Operations Training Command sprawled across the horizon, a make of buildings, ranges, and restricted zones that trained America's most elite warriors. Mara was 5'4", 118 pounds. Her braided hair was pulled tight against her scalp. Her uniform hung loose on her frame. She looked like an administrative clerk who'd gotten lost on her way to a desk job. That was the point. A staff sergeant approached her with a clipboard and a smile that lasted exactly 2 seconds before his eyes swept over her insignia and dismissed her entirely. "Sinclair Weapons Systems Analyst." That's correct. He didn't salute, didn't offer to carry her bag, just jerked his thumb toward a waiting vehicle. "Admin building's that way. Check in with personnel. Someone will show you to your quarters." Mara nodded once and walked past him. She'd been underestimated her entire career. In Bud's training, they'd called her the rounding error because instructors couldn't believe she'd made it past the first week. In sniper school, her spotter had requested a transfer because he didn't trust some girl to watch his back. That spotter was now working a security desk in Tampa. Mara had a confirmed kill at 2,100 meters, the longest shot by a female operator in American military history. The target had been an ISIS commander who'd been responsible for the deaths of 14 Marines. She'd taken that shot in a sandstorm with crosswinds gusting at 40 miles per hour. But none of that was in the file she'd handed over at the gate. As far as anyone at JSOTC knew, she was a mid-level analyst sent to evaluate weapons maintenance protocols. Boring. Invisible. Exactly what she needed to be. The real mission was sealed in a folder at the bottom of her duffel bag, stamped with classification markers that would make base commanders break into cold sweats. 7 women had been pushed out of JSOTC in 18 months. 3 medical discharges, 2 emergency transfers, 1 administrative separation for failure to adapt, and 1 suicide. Specialist Elena Vasquez, 24 years old, found in her quarters with a service pistol and a note that said only, "They won't stop. No one believes me." Naval Special Warfare Command had noticed the pattern 6 months ago. They'd sent investigators through official channels. Those investigators had found nothing. Clean records. Cooperative leadership. Everyone said the right things. But the women kept disappearing. So they'd sent Mara, not as an investigator, not as oversight, as bait. Her quarters were a small room in the female barracks, sparse but functional. She dropped her duffel on the bed and pulled out the sealed folder. Inside were photographs. 7 faces. 7 women who'd served with distinction before arriving at JSOTC, and then suddenly couldn't handle the pressure anymore. Staff Sergeant Yolanda Price, 10 years of service. Transferred out after filing an informal complaint that was never processed. Sergeant First Class Diana Okonkwo, Ranger qualified. Requested emergency reassignment citing personal reasons. Corporal Amanda Reyes, sniper candidate. Medical discharge for anxiety disorder despite having no prior mental health history. And Elena Vasquez, who'd died alone in a room just like this one. Mara studied their faces for a long time, memorized them, made them real. Then she turned to the second page. Names. The names that kept appearing in proximity to every single case. Sergeant First Class Derek Vance, 14 years of service, of 3 bronze stars, leadership evaluations that glowed like he walked on water. Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole, former competitive MMA fighter, known for being aggressive but effective. Specialist Tyler Briggs, communications specialist with access to base surveillance systems. Sergeant Nathan Webb, newest member, transferred in 8 months ago. No complaints filed against him yet. And above them all, Command Sergeant Major Harold Pruitt, 25 years of service, the senior enlisted leader at JSOTC, the man who processed every transfer request, the man who received every informal complaint, the man who made problems disappear. Mara closed the folder and slid it under her mattress. She had 72 hours to find proof. The mess hall was loud with the chaos of 200 operators eating dinner after a long training day. Mara grabbed a tray and found a seat at the end of a long table, positioning herself where she could watch the room without being obvious about it. 3 women sat together near the far wall. They ate quickly, heads down, not talking to anyone outside their small group. One of them glanced up as Mara sat down. Their eyes met. The woman looked away immediately. Not with hostility, with warning. Don't draw attention. Don't make yourself a target. Mara understood the message perfectly. She was halfway through her meal when the door swung open and 4 men walked in. The room didn't go silent. That would have been too obvious. But something shifted. Conversations got quieter. People suddenly became very interested in their food. The 3 women near the wall stood up and left through the side exit without finishing their trays. Mara kept eating. She watched them in her peripheral vision as they grabbed food and found a table in the center of the room. They were loud, laughing, taking up space like they owned it. The tallest one had to be Vance. 6'2", broad shoulders, the kind of easy confidence that came from never facing real consequences. He was telling a story that had the others in stitches. Cole was next to him. Thick neck-shaved head, the build of someone who spent more time in the gym than was healthy. He laughed the loudest at Vance's jokes. Briggs sat across from them, phone in hand, always recording something. He had the look of someone who collected things. Moments. Memories. Evidence. And Webb was at the end, younger than the others, laughing along, but always half a beat late, like he was still learning the script. Mara finished her food and stood to leave. She had to pass their table to reach the exit. Vance noticed her first. "Hey." She stopped, turned, made her expression blank and slightly nervous, the face of someone who didn't want trouble. "You're new. Just arrived today? What's your assignment?" "Weapons Systems Analysis. Administrative Review." Vance's smile widened. "A desk jockey. We don't get many of those out here." "Just temporary. Couple weeks." Cole leaned forward. "Where you staying?" "Female Barracks, Building 7. "Building 7? Cole repeated it like he was filing the information away. "Nice." Briggs had his phone pointed in her direction, not obviously recording, just positioned. "I should get going," Mara said. "Early start tomorrow." Vance waved dismissively. Sure. Welcome to JSOTC. We'll be seeing you around." It wasn't a greeting. It was a promise. That night, Mara walked the base, not obviously patrolling, just a new arrival getting familiar with her surroundings. No one questioned it. No one paid attention. She found the camera blind spots within the first hour. 3 major ones: the corridor behind the motor pool, the north stairwell of the training building, and the weapons vault complex where a maintenance request from 3 months ago showed that 2 cameras had been awaiting parts ever since. She found the carved messages in the women's bathroom near the barracks, words scratched into paint with keys or knife points. "Don't report, just leave." He won't stop. Building 7, room 104. Stay away. Room 104. Mara made a note. Elena Vasquez's room. She found the duty logs that showed Vance's unit had training rotations every Thursday night at the weapons vault complex, unsupervised, off the regular schedule, marked as Advanced Tactical Integration Exercises. The same rotation that coincided with 3 of the 7 incidents. And she found the woman crying in the parking lot behind the motor pool. Specialist Kennedy Duvall was 22 years old. She'd been at JSOTC for 3 months. She was sitting on the ground between 2 parked vehicles, knees pulled to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Mara approached slowly. "Hey." Duvall's head snapped up. Fear flooded her features before she recognized that Mara was female, and even then she didn't relax. "I'm fine, just needed air." "You're not fine." "I said I'm fine." Mara sat down on the ground next to her, not crowding, not pressuring, just present. A full minute passed before Duvall spoke again. "You're new here. Arrived today. Get out while you can." Mara didn't respond. "I'm serious. Whatever assignment brought you here, find a way to cut it short. This place," Duvall's voice cracked. "This place is wrong." "What happened?" Duvall laughed bitterly. "Nothing. That's what everyone will tell you. Nothing happened. Nothing ever happens. It's all jokes and accidents and misunderstandings." "What really happened?" The young woman was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. 3 weeks ago. Night training exercise. I got separated from my group. Someone told me there was a schedule change that I was supposed to report to the weapons vault for equipment check. She paused. Swallowed hard. There was no schedule change. When I got there, 4 of them were waiting. Mara felt her jaw tighten. What did they do? They didn't get far. Someone else showed up. A training cadre doing rounds. They scattered. Made it look like I'd gotten lost. But they'd planned it. They always plan it. Duvall wiped her face with the back of her hand. They know the schedules. They know the blind spots. They know exactly who to target. Did you report it? To who? Duvall's laugh was hollow. Command Sergeant Major Pruitt. He's the one who told me to keep my mouth shut. Said there was no evidence. Said I'd misunderstood the situation. Said if I filed a formal complaint, it would damage my career and accomplish nothing. He said that directly, word for word. And you know what, he's right. 3 women before me tried to report. All 3 got transferred out within a month. Officially, it was their choice. Unofficially, everyone knew what happened to women who talked. Mara processed this. Why are you still here? Duvall looked at her with something that might have been pride, or might have been foolishness. Because I'm not letting them run me out. This is my career. I earned my spot here. If I leave, they win. Even after what happened, nothing happened. Remember, that's the official story, and I'm sticking to it. They sat in silence for another minute. What's your name? Duval asked. Sinclair. Mara Sinclair. What do you actually do? Mara. And don't tell me weapons systems analysis. No analyst walks the base at midnight looking for camera blind spots. Mara studied the young woman carefully. If I told you, you'd have to trust me completely. And if you're wrong about me, if I'm part of this, then you just made yourself a target. Duval held her gaze. I'm already a target. At least now I know you're actually paying attention. Mara made her decision. I'm here to burn them down. All of them. But I need evidence that can't be dismissed. I need testimony that can't be ignored. And I need to catch them in the act. Duval's eyes widened. You're crazy. Possibly. They'll hurt you. They'll do worse than what they tried with me. Let them try. Something shifted in Duval's expression. A spark that had been nearly extinguished flickering back to life. What do you need from me? Not testimony. Not yet. For now, I need you to do exactly what you've been doing. Stay careful. Stay quiet. Let them think they've won. And you, Mara stood and offered her hand. I'm going to be the new girl who doesn't know any better. The desk jockey who wanders into places she shouldn't be. The easy target. Duval took her hand and stood. You're bait. The best traps use convincing bait. What happens when they take it? Mara smiled, and there was nothing warm in it. Then they learn why I'm called Ghost Eye. The next morning, Mara reported to the administrative building for her cover assignment. She spent 4 hours reviewing weapons maintenance logs that she couldn't have cared less about making notes on inventory discrepancies. That didn't matter. The work was mind-numbing. That was fine. She wasn't here for the paperwork. At lunch, she walked past the training ranges where advanced operators were running through live fire exercises. She found a spot on a small hill overlooking Range 7 and sat down to eat her sandwich. Range 7 was a precision marksmanship course, long-distance shooting, the kind of work she'd built her entire career around. A group of snipers were taking turns on the 1,000-meter line. Most of their shots were good. A few were exceptional. None of them were remarkable. Mara watched with the eye of someone who'd been doing this since she was 19 years old. One of the shooters was having trouble. His breathing was off. Every time he exhaled and squeezed, he was rushing the trigger pull. His shots were grouping left by about 6 inches. She could have fixed it in 30 seconds. Instead, she finished her sandwich and walked away. The last thing she needed was attention. That afternoon, she began planting her surveillance equipment. It was delicate work. The devices were small, state-of-the-art, designed to look like ordinary base infrastructure. A smoke detector in the corridor near the weapons vault. A power strip in the common area of Building 7. An air freshener in the bathroom where she'd found the carved messages. Each device had a 72-hour battery life and encrypted transmission to a secure server that only 3 people in the world could access. Mara placed them carefully, methodically, with the same patience she used when setting up a sniper position. Waiting was part of the job. She was good at waiting. On her second night, Vance found her. She was in the base library pretending to read a technical manual about small arms maintenance. It was 2100 hours. The library was nearly empty. He sat down across from her without asking permission. Sinclair, right, the analyst? That's me. How's your first day going? Quiet. Lots of paperwork. Vance smiled. It was a good smile. Warm, confident, the kind of smile that had probably gotten him out of 100 difficult situations. Paperwork's important. Someone's got to do it. That's what they tell me. He leaned back in his chair, making himself comfortable. You know, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. I wasn't very welcoming. That's on me. You were fine. No, I wasn't. New people show up here, they need to feel like they're part of the team. Especially, he gestured vaguely at her. You know, especially women. I know this environment can be intense. Lot of testosterone. Lot of competition. Not everyone knows how to act around female operators. Mara kept her expression neutral. I've been in the military for 10 years. I'm used to it. 10 years. He nodded appreciatively. That's impressive. Most analysts I meet are fresh out of training. You've got experience. Some? Where were you stationed before this? Various places. Nothing exciting. Nothing exciting? He raised an eyebrow. Come on. 10 years, you must have some stories. Not really. Desk work mostly. Equipment reviews. Logistics support. She was feeding him exactly what he wanted to hear. A career of nothing. A woman who'd never faced real danger. An easy mark. Vance's smile widened slightly. Well, if you ever want to see the exciting stuff, let me know. I can arrange a tour of the advanced training areas. Show you what real operators do. That's kind of you. I try to be helpful. He stood up. Anyway, I'll let you get back to your reading. Just wanted to clear the air from yesterday. I appreciate it. He walked away, and Mara let out a slow breath. The hunting had begun, son. Over the next 48 hours, she built her case. The surveillance devices captured everything. Conversations in the common areas. Movement patterns in the corridors. Timestamps showing who was where and when. She cross-referenced the data with duty logs, training schedules, and the timeline of previous incidents. The pattern was unmistakable. Every Thursday night, Vance's unit had access to the weapons vault complex for advanced training exercises. No supervision, no oversight. Just 4 men with keys to a building where the cameras didn't work. And every Thursday night for the past year, something had happened. A woman cornered, a complaint filed and ignored, a transfer processed without questions. The weapons vault was their hunting ground. Thursday was their hunting day. And this Thursday was 3 days away. On Wednesday night, Mara got the call she'd been expecting. Her secure satellite phone buzzed once, a text from Naval Special Warfare Command. Asset confirmed. Pruitt made contact with external parties regarding your file. Your cover may be compromised within 48 hours. Recommend extraction. She stared at the message for a long moment. Pruitt was digging. Someone had told him to look closer at the new analyst. Within 2 days, he'd know who she really was. If she was smart, she'd pull out now. Take what evidence she had, and let someone else finish the job. But what she had wasn't enough. Testimony from Duval would be dismissed. Surveillance footage of conversations wasn't proof of assault. The patterns were damning but circumstantial. She needed them to act. She needed to catch them in the act. Mara typed her response, proceeding as planned. Thursday is go. The reply came instantly. Your call. Support standing by. Good hunting. And she deleted the message and tucked the phone away. Tomorrow was Thursday. Tomorrow she'd walk into the weapons vault alone. Tomorrow she'd find out if 4 predators could handle prey that bit back. Thursday arrived with a heat wave that sent the temperature over 100 degrees by noon. Mara spent the day doing exactly what an analyst would do. Reviewing reports, making notes, looking bored. But inside she was running through scenarios. 4 men. Confined space, limited exits, weapons potentially available if they reached the storage racks. She'd faced worse odds in combat. 6 insurgents in a basement in Raqqa. A sniper duel with a Taliban marksman in the mountains of Afghanistan. A hostage extraction gone wrong in Somalia that had left her with 3 cracked ribs and a purple heart. 4 predators who thought they were dealing with a desk jockey. That wasn't odds. That was practice. At 2100 hours, she received a message on her base email from an account she didn't recognize. Equipment inspection required at Weapons Vault C. Report at 2200 hours. Signed command, Sergeant Major Pruitt. It was a trap, obviously. Pruitt didn't handle equipment inspections. The timing was too convenient. The location was too isolated. They were coming for her. Mara smiled. She replied to the email, acknowledged, will report as ordered. Then she began to prepare. At 2145, she walked toward the weapons vault complex. Her body camera was hidden under her uniform lens, positioned to capture everything in front of her. A secondary recording device was sewn into her sleeve. A third was in her boot. If they destroyed one, 2 would survive. If they destroyed all 3, the surveillance equipment she'd planted in the corridor would catch whatever happened in the approach. She wasn't going in blind. She was going in armed, just not with weapons they could see. The weapons vault complex sat at the edge of the training area, a series of reinforced buildings that housed everything from small arms to explosives. Building C was the smallest, used primarily for equipment checks and inventory management. It was also the most isolated, the most soundproof, the farthest from regular foot traffic, the perfect hunting ground. Mara paused at the door and took a breath. Then she walked inside. The corridor was dark. Only emergency lighting. The overhead fixtures had been turned off. She kept walking. Her footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. The air smelled like gun oil and dust. 20 meters in, she heard the door behind her close. She didn't turn around. Another 20 meters. The corridor opened into the main vault room. Shelves of weapons, racks of ammunition, and 4 shadows waiting in the darkness. The lights came on all at once, blinding. Vance stood in the center, arms crossed, smiling that same warm smile. Cole was to his left, cracking his knuckles. Briggs was to his right, phone already in hand, camera light active. And Webb was behind her, blocking the exit, his face tight with something that might have been excitement or might have been fear. Sinclair, Vance's voice echoed in the empty space. Thanks for coming. The email said equipment inspection. Did it? He took a step closer. My mistake. What is this? This is a conversation. That's all. We've been having a lot of conversations about you lately. Where you came from, what you're really doing here, why someone sends a weapons analyst to a special operations training facility. Mara kept her voice steady. I go where I'm assigned. See, that's what your file says. But my friend Pruitt, he's got connections, and those connections say your file is fake. Cole stepped closer, cutting off the angle to the left. They say you're not really an analyst. They say you're something else. Something dangerous. Mara's heart rate stayed even. Controlled. The same calm she maintained when she was looking through a scope at a target 2,000 meters away. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Vance was close now. Close enough that she could see the sweat on his upper lip, the excitement in his eyes. Because I think you came here looking for trouble. And I think you found it. Briggs circled to the right, phone raised, recording. The thing is, Vance continued, it doesn't really matter who you are. Nobody knows you're here. Nobody's coming to check on you and this building. He gestured around them. Soundproof, no cameras, no witnesses. What do you want? Vance smiled wider. Obey us. The words landed like a slap. Get on your knees. Mara didn't move. Now, She looked at him with something that wasn't fear. It was assessment. The same look she gave targets through her scope before she pulled the trigger. No. Vance's smile faltered for just a second. I don't think you understand the situation. I understand it perfectly. Her voice was ice. 4 men, 1 woman. You think numbers make you strong. You've done this before. 7 women, 18 months. Elena Vasquez. The name hit Vance like a physical blow. What did you say? Elena Vasquez, 24 years old. She tried to report what you did to her. Pruitt buried it. 3 weeks later, she put a gun in her mouth. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Mara's eyes swept across all 4 of them. I know your patterns, your schedules, your methods. I know about the cameras that have been awaiting parts for 3 months. I know about the informal complaints that disappeared. I know about Pruitt's meetings where he told you exactly how to handle problems. Cole looked at Vance. What the hell is she talking about? Shut up. Vance's voice was tight. She's bluffing. Am I? Mara tilted her head slightly. Then why are you sweating? Grab her. Cole moved first. His hand closed around her wrist fingers, digging into flesh, yanking her toward him. That was his first mistake. His last mistake was assuming she needed room to fight. Mara didn't resist the pull. She let it carry her forward, let Cole think he'd won for exactly half a second. Then she twisted. Her free hand came up not in a fist, but in a precise strike to the soft tissue under his chin. The heel of her palm connected with his throat, not hard enough to crush his trachea, just hard enough to cut off his air and trigger every panic response in his nervous system. Cole's grip loosened as he gagged. She seized his wrist before he could pull away, rotated it past the point of natural extension, and felt the bones shift under her fingers. His scream echoed off the vault walls. The wrist snapped with a sound like a green branch breaking. Cole collapsed, clutching his arm, making sounds that weren't quite words. Elapsed time. 3 seconds. Briggs was still recording, frozen in shock, when Mara turned toward him. She covered the distance in 2 strides. His phone arm came up instinctively, and she caught it at the elbow, hyperextended the joint, until she felt the tendons strain and pulled him off balance. Her knee drove into his solar plexus, folding him like paper. He dropped. The phone clattered to the floor screen, still lit camera, still recording. Elapsed time. 6 seconds. Vance finally reacted. He lunged at her with the confidence of a man who'd never lost a fight, all bulk and rage and wounded pride. Mara sidestepped. She'd learned to fight in places where hesitation meant death. Bud-S had taught her endurance. Special operations had taught her brutality. But it was the quiet training, the classified programs where they learned to kill without witnesses that had made her something more. Vance's momentum carried him past her. She helped him along with a strike to the back of his knee that buckled his leg. He stumbled, caught himself, turned. She was already there. Her elbow connected with his temple. Not a knockout blow. Not yet just enough to make his vision blur, his balance waver. He swung wild. She ducked under it and drove 3 rapid punches into his kidney. He dropped to one knee, gasping. She grabbed his hair and pulled his head back. Look at me. He looked. There was no fear in her eyes, no anger, just the cold, patient focus of someone who had spent years learning exactly how much damage a human body could take before it stopped working. You made a mistake, she said quietly. You should have checked my real file. Then she released him. Vance collapsed forward, retching. Elapsed time, 14 seconds. Webb was still at the door. He hadn't moved. Hadn't tried to help. Hadn't tried to run. He just stood there watching his face pale, his hands shaking. Mara turned toward him. "Don't." His voice cracked. "Please, I never—" "You watched. I didn't hurt anyone. You watched." She took a step closer. "Every time. You watched and did nothing. They would have killed me if I said anything." "No. They would have just pushed you out, the way they pushed out everyone who wasn't like them." She stopped 3 feet away from him. "You have a choice right now. Run, and I will find you. Or stay, and maybe you survive what's coming." Webb's legs gave out. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Save it for the court-martial." Mara walked to where Briggs had dropped his phone. She picked it up. The recording was still running. 47 minutes and counting. She tapped the screen to save the file. Then she pulled out her own phone and dialed a number. "Ghost Eye to Overwatch. Package secured. 4 in custody. Send the cavalry." The response was immediate. "Confirmed. Security forces en route. ETA 3 minutes." She ended the call and looked at the 4 men scattered around the vault. Cole cradling his broken wrist. Briggs curled in the fetal position. Vance on his knees, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. Webb crying against the wall. None of them moved. None of them spoke. They'd walked into this room expecting to destroy another woman's career, another woman's dignity, another woman's life. Instead, they'd documented their own destruction. Mara walked to the center of the room and waited. 3 minutes later, the doors burst open. Military police flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. They saw the scene and hesitated, trying to process 4 men down, and 1 woman standing calm and untouched in the middle of it all. "Master Chief Petty Officer Mara Sinclair," she said, holding up her real credentials. "SEAL Team 7, Special Operations Oversight. These men are under arrest for attempted assault on a superior officer conspiracy and criminal misconduct." The lead MP looked at her credentials, then at the men on the floor, then back at her. "Ma'am, we had a report of a routine equipment inspection." "There's nothing routine about this." She handed him Briggs's phone. "Full confession, time-stamped, preserved." She stepped past him toward the door. "Wait," he called. "Where are you going?" Mara didn't turn around. "To finish what I started." The corridor outside the weapons vault was chaos. MPs shouting commands, radios crackling, boots pounding concrete, but Mara moved through it like smoke, her mind already 3 steps ahead. Pruitt. He was the one who made this possible. The shield. The eraser. Without him, Vance and his crew were just 4 predators waiting to be caught. With him, they'd operated for 4 years without consequence. She had the soldiers. Now she needed the general. Her secure phone buzzed. A text from Naval Special Warfare Command. "Pruitt aware of vault incident. Currently in his quarters. Has not attempted contact with base security. Possible document destruction in progress." Mara broke into a run. Pruitt's quarters were in the senior enlisted housing block, a 10-minute walk from the weapons vault. She covered it in 4. 2 MPs were posted outside his door when she arrived, looking confused and uncertain. They'd been told to secure the area, but not why. "Stand down," Mara ordered, holding up her credentials. "I have authority here." The younger MP squinted at her ID. "Ma'am, we were told to prevent anyone from entering or leaving." "Who told you that?" "Command Sergeant Major Pruitt, ma'am, about 15 minutes ago." Mara felt her jaw tighten. Pruitt had known something was wrong before the MPs even arrived at the vault. Someone had warned him. "New orders. You work for me now. Nobody enters, nobody leaves, and if Pruitt tries to come through this door, you detain him immediately. Ma'am, he outranks us. Not anymore. She pushed past them and knocked once on the door. No response. She knocked again, harder. Command Sergeant Major Pruitt, this is Master Chief Petty Officer Sinclair. You have 30 seconds to open this door, or I'm coming through it. Silence. Then, slowly, the door opened. Harold Pruitt was 62 years old, built like a retired linebacker, with silver hair cropped close to his skull, and eyes that had seen everything and learned to ignore most of it. He wore civilian clothes, khakis, and a polo shirt, but his posture was pure military. He looked at Mara with an expression that was almost amused. The analyst. Not quite. No. He stepped back, allowing her to enter. I figured that out about an hour ago, when my contacts told me your file was fabricated by Naval Special Warfare Command. Mara entered the room. Her eyes swept across it automatically. Desk cluttered with papers. Laptop open. Shredder in the corner, its bin full of fresh confetti. Destroying evidence. Organizing my files. I'm a meticulous man. You're a criminal. Pruitt's smile didn't waver. That's a strong word. I've served this country for 25 years. 3 combat deployments. 2 Bronze Stars. A Purple Heart. I've trained more special operators than you've ever met. And you've protected more predators than I can count. Protected. He shook his head slowly. I managed situations. There's a difference. 7 women in 18 months. 7 transfers. Voluntary, paperwork signed. Everything by the book. Elena Vasquez. For the first time, something flickered in Pruitt's eyes. Not guilt. Something colder. Vasquez was troubled. Mental health issues. It happens. She was assaulted. She reported it. You buried it. She made accusations she couldn't prove. I advised her to focus on her career. She made a different choice. Mara stepped closer. She put a gun in her mouth because you told her no one would believe her. I told her the truth. In this world, accusations without evidence destroy careers. Hers would have been destroyed either way. I gave her an option. You gave her a death sentence. Pruitt's expression hardened. You don't understand how this works. You come in here with your sealed orders and your righteous anger thinking you can tear down everything I've built. But this system exists for a reason. These units, these men, they're the best we have. You don't throw away a weapon because it has rough edges. You don't cover up assault because the assailant has a good evaluation. I covered up nothing. His voice rose slightly. I managed problems. I kept this facility running. I kept careers intact. Whose careers, not the women who got pushed out? Pruitt waved dismissively. They weren't cut out for this environment. Special operations isn't for everyone. Some people can't handle the pressure. Some people can't handle being attacked by their own teammates. Those are accusations. Mara reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She tapped the screen once and held it up. Pruitt's voice filled the room. Handle it like before. Make her transfer. I don't care how. Just make sure there's no paperwork. The blood drained from his face. That's you, Mara said quietly. 3 weeks ago, talking to Vance about Specialist Kennedy Duvall, recorded by a surveillance device I planted in the common area. That's illegal. It's authorized. Sealed orders. Direct from OSD. Pruitt's composure cracked. Just a fraction, but Mara saw it. You don't know what you're doing. The people above me, the connections I have, you think this ends with me. I make one phone call, and your career disappears. Make the call. He stared at her. Go ahead. She stepped closer. Pick up the phone. Call whoever you think can save you. I'll wait. Pruitt didn't move. That's what I thought. Mara lowered her phone. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit down. You're going to answer every question I ask, and you're going to give me the names of everyone who knew what was happening and chose to look away. And if I don't, then I hand this recording to JAG, to the Inspector General, to the Secretary of Defense, and to every news outlet that covers military affairs. Your face becomes the face of every cover-up in the armed forces. Your legacy becomes the thing that mothers warn their daughters about before they enlist. Pruitt's jaw worked silently. Or, Mara continued, you cooperate, you provide testimony, you help me dismantle the system you built, and maybe you spend the rest of your life in a minimum security facility instead of Fort Leavenworth. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Pruitt sat down heavily in his desk chair. The fight drained out of him like air from a punctured tire. What do you want to know? Everything. He talked for 2 hours. Names, dates, incidents, cover-ups stretching back not months but years. A network of protection that extended beyond JSOTC to other facilities, other commands, other branches. Vance wasn't unique. He was a product, a symptom of a disease that had been allowed to fester because the people in charge didn't want to see it. Pruitt gave her everything, not because he was sorry, because he was trying to save himself. It wouldn't work, but Mara let him believe it might. When he finished, she stood up. MPs are outside. You'll be taken into custody and held for formal charges. What about my deal? I never made you a deal. I told you what might happen. I didn't promise anything. His face twisted. You lied to me. I gave you options. You made a choice. She paused at the door. Just like you gave Elena Vasquez options. Pruitt's mouth opened, but no words came out. Mara knocked on the door. The MPs entered immediately. Command Sergeant Major Harold Pruitt is under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and accessory to assault. Read him his rights and transport him to holding. She walked out without looking back. The base was different now. Word had spread the way it always did in military communities. Not through official channels, not through announcements, but through whispers, through glances, through the sudden absence of men who had been untouchable yesterday. Mara walked toward the command building, and people watched her pass. Some looked afraid, some looked confused, but others, mostly women, looked at her with something else. Hope. She'd seen that look before. In villages in Iraq where American forces had removed a local warlord. In refugee camps where aid workers finally arrived. It was the look of people who had stopped believing that help would come and were trying to process that it finally had. Specialist Kennedy Duvall intercepted her outside the chow hall. Is it true? Mara stopped. Is what true? They're saying Vance is in custody. Cole has a broken wrist. Pruitt's been arrested. Duvall's voice was barely above a whisper. They're saying you did it. I had help. You did it. Duvall's eyes were wet. I didn't think, I never believed anyone would actually believe that it would stop, that someone would make it stop. Mara put a hand on the younger woman's shoulder. It's not over yet. There's going to be an investigation, formal interviews. You'll have to testify about what happened to you. Duvall nodded quickly. I know. I'm ready. It won't be easy. Defense attorneys will try to discredit you. They'll dig into your past. They'll make you repeat the story until you want to scream. I don't care. Something fierce had replaced the fear in Duvall's voice. I spent 3 months being afraid to walk across base alone. I spent 3 months jumping at shadows. If telling my story means they can't do this to anyone else, I'll tell it 1,000 times. Mara squeezed her shoulder once, then released it. Go get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be long. Duvall hesitated. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Were you scared when you walked into that vault knowing they'd be there? Mara considered the question carefully. No, How 4 men, alone? How do you not feel fear? I didn't say I don't feel fear. I said I wasn't scared of them. She paused. I was scared of failing. I was scared of becoming another name in a file that got buried. But them, she shook her head. They were amateurs. They'd never faced anyone who could fight back. And you're not an amateur. I'm a SEAL sniper. We spend years learning to control our bodies, our breath, our heartbeat. We wait for hours in impossible conditions for a single shot. 4 bullies in a locked room. A faint smile crossed her face. That's not combat, that's cleanup. Duval stared at her with something approaching awe. Get some sleep, Mara repeated. I need you sharp. She continued toward the command building. Colonel Marcus Webb's office was on the 3rd floor. He was waiting for her. Not Pruitt's colonel. A different Webb, same rank, no relation, which was the kind of coincidence that happened in the military more often than people realized. Colonel Webb was the facility commander, the man ultimately responsible for everything that happened at JSOTC. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Master Chief Sinclair. He didn't stand when she entered. Please, sit. She remained standing. I've been on the phone with Washington for the past 3 hours, he said. They're sending an investigation team. Full IG review. Congressional notification. Good. Good. He laughed bitterly. This facility is about to be torn apart. Careers are going to end. Mine probably included. Did you know? The question hung in the air. Webb closed his eyes. I knew something wasn't right. The transfer requests, the complaints that never went anywhere. Pruitt always had explanations, always had paperwork. I told myself he was handling it. You told yourself what you wanted to believe. I told myself that I had more important things to focus on. Training schedules, resource allocation, mission readiness. I let someone else handle the personnel issues because that's how command works. That's how command fails. He opened his eyes. You think I don't know that? You think I haven't been sitting here for the past 3 hours realizing that every woman who got pushed out of this facility did so because I didn't ask the right questions? Did you know about Elena Vasquez? I knew she died. I knew it was ruled a suicide. I didn't know... He stopped, swallowed hard. I didn't know what led to it. Would it have mattered if you did? Webb didn't answer. They both knew the answer. I'm offering you a choice, Mara said. The investigation is coming whether you cooperate or not, but how it goes depends on what you do in the next 24 hours. What do you want? Full access to every personnel file, every complaint, every transfer request from the past 5 years. I want a complete roster of everyone in Vance's chain of command. I want the names of every person who processed paperwork that made problems disappear. That could implicate dozens of people. Good. Well, some of them are good soldiers who made bad judgment calls. Then they'll have a chance to explain themselves. But no more cover-ups, no more quiet transfers, no more protecting reputations at the expense of victims. Webb stared at her for a long moment. You know, he said finally, when I got the notification that an analyst was being assigned here, I didn't think twice about it. Just another bureaucrat checking boxes. If I'd known who you really were. You would have done what warned Pruitt blocked my access. I don't know. He looked down at his desk. Maybe. Maybe I would have done exactly what I always do. Protected the institution. Kept the machine running. That's why they sent someone like me. Someone you couldn't protect against. Webb nodded slowly. The files you want. I'll have them ready within the hour. Thank you, Colonel. She turned to leave. Master Chief? She stopped. The woman who died. Vasquez. Did she have family? A mother in Phoenix. A younger brother in the Marines. Have they been notified about what really happened? Not yet. Webb took a deep breath. When they are, When this all comes out, I want to talk to them. Personally. Not to make excuses. Just to tell them that I'm sorry. That I failed their daughter. Their sister. Mara studied him. There was genuine pain in his eyes. Not just the pain of a career about to end, but something deeper. The realization of complicity. I'll make sure they know. She walked out. The night had turned cold. Desert temperatures dropped fast once the sun went down, and Mara could see her breath as she crossed the compound. 4 men in custody, 1 command sergeant major arrested. A full investigation incoming. It should have felt like victory. It felt like a beginning. Because this wasn't about one facility, one unit, one group of predators. This was about a system that had been designed to protect itself at all costs, even when the costs were measured in broken women and ignored screams. Mara had cut out a tumor, but the disease was still there. In the regulations that made reporting difficult, in the culture that blamed victims, in the silence that protected perpetrators. She couldn't fix all of it. No one person could. But she could make sure that the people responsible for this particular failure faced consequences. Real consequences. The kind that sent a message. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Ghost Eye. You made enemies tonight. Watch your back. She stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it. She'd made enemies the day she decided to become what she was. One more didn't change anything. Tomorrow the investigation would begin. Testimony would be gathered. Charges would be filed. The slow machinery of military justice would grind into motion. But tonight, for the first time in 4 years, the women at JSOTC could walk the base without looking over their shoulders. That was enough. For now, that was enough. The investigation team arrived at 0600. 3 vehicles. 8 personnel. JAG officers, criminal investigators, and a 2-star admiral who had flown in overnight from Washington specifically for this case. Mara watched them from the window of her temporary office, her 3rd cup of coffee growing cold in her hands. She hadn't slept. There hadn't been time. The files Colonel Webb had provided painted a picture far worse than she'd imagined. Not 7 women in 18 months. 23 women in 4 years. All pushed out through transfers, medical discharges, or quiet separations. All with complaints that had been marked resolved without resolution. And Elena Vasquez wasn't the only death. Sergeant First Class Danielle Moreau, 2 years ago. Car accident on a desert highway. Single vehicle. No witnesses. The investigation had been closed in 72 hours, but Mara had found the original incident report buried in Pruitt's files. Moreau had filed a formal complaint against Cole 3 weeks before her death. The complaint had been transferred to Pruitt for appropriate handling. It was never processed. A knock at her door broke her concentration. Enter. The door opened, and Rear Admiral Catherine Shaw stepped inside. She was in her late 50s, silver hair pulled back tight, uniform immaculate despite the red-eye flight. Her face was unreadable. Master Chief Sinclair. Mara stood. Admiral? At ease. Shaw closed the door behind her. I've been briefed on your operation. Impressive work. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me yet. Shaw's tone shifted. You've opened a door that a lot of people wanted to stay closed. Powerful people. People with friends in Congress on promotion boards in the Pentagon. I'm aware. Are you... Shaw moved closer. An hour ago, I received a call from a senator asking why a Navy SEAL was conducting unauthorized investigations on an Army facility. He wanted to know who authorized your mission and whether proper inter-service protocols were followed. My orders came directly from Naval Special Warfare Command with OSD authorization. I know that. You know that. But the narrative is already being shaped. You're not a hero in this story, Sinclair. You're a rogue operator who overstepped her authority and destroyed careers based on insufficient evidence. Mara felt her jaw tighten. Insufficient evidence? I have video footage, recorded confessions, testimony from Pruitt himself. Evidence that was gathered through surveillance devices planted without base command approval. Evidence that defense attorneys will argue was obtained illegally. My orders authorized covert collection. Your orders are classified, which means they can't be entered into a court record without special dispensation, which means a smart defense attorney will argue that everything you collected is fruit of the poisonous tree. The words hit Mara like ice water. You're telling me they might walk. I'm telling you that the fight isn't over. It's just beginning. Shaw pulled out a chair and sat down. The men you arrested have lawyers now, good ones. Military defense attorneys who specialize in exactly these situations. They're already filing motions to suppress evidence, dismiss charges, and discredit your testimony. My testimony? You're the primary witness, Sinclair. You're also the one who broke Cole's wrist and assaulted 3 other service members. Their attorneys are claiming excessive force. Self-defense isn't unlimited, and you're a trained special operator who could have subdued them without causing permanent injury. Mara stared at her. They tried to assault me. And you defended yourself. But the question that will be asked in court is whether you used proportional force or whether you acted with intent to harm. They blocked the exits. They recorded me. They said no one would hear me scream. I believe you. But belief isn't proof. And right now the only video evidence we have shows you systematically dismantling 4 men in under a minute. Without context, that footage makes you look like the aggressor. There is context. Briggs was recording. The entire confrontation is documented. Briggs's phone is being analyzed by forensic specialists. His attorney is claiming the footage was tampered with. That's a lie. Of course it is. But it's a lie that will have to be disproven. And while it's being disproven, doubt is being planted. In the press. In the chain of command. In the minds of everyone who will eventually have to decide whether these men deserve punishment. Mara sat down heavily. The exhaustion she'd been holding at bay crashed over her like a wave. What do you need from me? Shaw leaned forward. I need you to understand that this isn't just about the men you arrested. This is about the system that protected them. And that system doesn't go down without a fight. I know that. Do you? Because in the next 48 hours, you're going to be questioned by investigators who will treat you like a suspect. You're going to see news reports that paint you as unstable, vindictive, or both. You're going to receive threats from people who think you've betrayed the Brotherhood. I've already received threats. Shaw nodded slowly. And they're going to get worse. The people who benefit from silence don't give up easily. They're going to come after you with everything they have. Your service record, your personal life, your psychological evaluations. My psych evals are clean. Everyone's psych evals are clean until someone decides to read them differently. Combat deployments, high-stress operations, kills confirmed. All of that can be reframed as evidence of instability by the right expert witness. Mara felt the anger building in her chest. Not at Shaw. At the system that made this conversation necessary. So, what do I do? You hold the line. Shaw's voice softened slightly. You tell the truth over and over, no matter how many times they ask the same questions in different ways. You let them attack you, and you don't lose your temper. You don't give them ammunition. And if that's not enough, then we fight harder. Shaw stood. I didn't fly across the country to watch 4 predators walk free. But I also won't pretend this is going to be easy. You've done the hard part. Now comes the harder part. She walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. Pruitt made a deal. Mara's blood went cold. What kind of deal? He's cooperating with investigators, providing names, dates, documentation. In exchange, his attorney is requesting reduced charges and a facility transfer. He's the one who enabled all of this. I know, but he's also the one who can expose the others. There are people above him, Sinclair, people who knew what was happening and looked away. Pruitt can give us those names. And in exchange, he gets to spend his retirement in a minimum security facility instead of Leavenworth. Maybe. That's not my call to make. Shaw opened the door. Get some rest. The formal interviews start in 4 hours. She left. Mara sat alone in the office, staring at the stack of files in front of her. 23 women. 2 dead. Dozens of careers destroyed. And the man who made it all possible might walk away with nothing more than a slap on the wrist. This wasn't justice, but it was the beginning of something that might become justice if she could hold on long enough to see it through. 4 hours later, Mara sat in a sterile interview room facing 3 investigators. Lieutenant Colonel William Drake from the Army Criminal Investigation Division, Commander Teresa Hong from Naval Criminal Investigative Service, and a civilian attorney named Marcus Webb, no relation to the colonel or the sergeant who represented the Department of Defense Inspector General. Drake started the questioning. Master Chief Sinclair, let's begin with your arrival at JSOTC. You presented false credentials to base security. Is that correct? I presented credentials consistent with my cover assignment. The assignment was authorized by Naval Special Warfare Command. But the credentials were false. The credentials were operational, designed to facilitate covert assessment of facility climate. Drake made a note. And during this covert assessment, you planted surveillance devices throughout the facility without informing base command. Correct. Including in private areas where personnel had a reasonable expectation of privacy. Including in areas where previous incidents had occurred and where evidence suggested ongoing criminal activity. But without authorization from the facility commander. Mara kept her voice level. My authorization came from a higher authority than the facility commander. That authorization specifically permitted covert collection without local notification to prevent evidence tampering. Drake leaned back. The defense attorneys are arguing that your surveillance was illegal regardless of your authorization level. That evidence collected through unauthorized means is inadmissible. Then let them argue it. The facts remain the same. Commander Hong spoke up. Master Chief, let's talk about the night of the incident. You received an email summoning you to the weapons vault. I received an email purporting to be from Command Sergeant Major Pruitt regarding an equipment inspection. But you knew it wasn't legitimate. I suspected it wasn't legitimate. Yet you went anyway. Yes. Why? Mara met Hong's eyes directly. Because I needed them to act. Surveillance footage and intercepted communications established a pattern of behavior, but pattern evidence isn't enough for prosecution. I needed them to commit an overt act that could be documented and prosecuted. So you used yourself as bait. I positioned myself to observe and document criminal behavior. And when 4 men entered that vault with hostile intent, you didn't attempt to leave or call for assistance. There was no opportunity to leave. They blocked the exits. Calling for assistance would have compromised my position and potentially resulted in greater harm. So you fought. I defended myself. Hong glanced at Drake. 4 men, 1 woman, 1 broken wrist, multiple contusions, 1 possible concussion. That's not self-defense, Master Chief. That's a systematic takedown. It's exactly what they trained me to do. Would you prefer I had allowed them to assault me? I'd prefer you had followed standard protocols for a situation involving multiple potential assailants. Standard protocols assume backup is available. Backup wasn't available. I improvised. The civilian attorney Webb spoke for the first time. Master Chief Sinclair, let me ask you directly. Did you go to that vault, hoping they would attack you so you could hurt them? Mara paused. The question was a trap. Any answer could be twisted. No. No. I went to that vault hoping they would attack me so I could document their attack and ensure they faced legal consequences. Hurting them was a byproduct of self-defense, not a goal. But you did hurt them. I neutralized threats. The extent of their injuries was determined by their level of resistance. Cole's wrist was broken in 3 places. His career as an operator is over. Cole grabbed me first. He initiated physical contact. The break occurred when he resisted the control technique I applied. And you're trained in control techniques that don't cause permanent injury. I'm trained in techniques that work. In a situation with multiple armed hostiles, I don't have the luxury of choosing the gentlest option. Webb made a note. The defense will argue that you could have subdued them without permanent damage, that your choice of techniques reflected malice rather than necessity. The defense can argue whatever they want. 4 men cornered a woman alone, blocked her exits, recorded her, and declared their intention to assault her. My response was proportional to the threat. That's for the court to decide. Yes, it is. The interview continued for 3 more hours. They asked about her service record, her psychological history, her relationships with colleagues. They asked whether she had personal animosity toward any of the accused. They asked whether she had ever been assaulted before and whether that influenced her actions. Mara answered every question truthfully, carefully, without emotion. It was exhausting. It was demeaning. It was exactly what Admiral Shaw had warned her about. When they finally released her, she walked out of the building feeling like she'd been through another kind of combat. The kind where the weapons were words and the wounds were invisible. Specialist Duvall was waiting outside. How bad? Mara shook her head. Could have been worse. They questioned me this morning, for 2 hours. They kept asking whether I'd coordinated my story with you, whether you'd told me what to say. What did you tell them? The truth, that I never even knew you were an operator until after the vault, that I thought you were just another victim about to be processed through the system. Good. Duvall fell into step beside her as they walked. There's something else. The other women, the ones who got pushed out. 3 of them have contacted the investigators. They want to testify. Mara stopped walking. 3. So far. Word spreading about what you did, about the investigation. Women who were afraid to talk before are starting to come forward. That's good. That's very good. But there's a problem. Duvall's expression darkened. Sergeant Webb, the young one from the vault, he's talking to the defense. What do you mean, talking? He's claiming he was coerced, that he was forced to participate by Vance and Cole, that he tried to stop it but was afraid for his safety. He blocked the door. He says he was positioned there by Vance, that he didn't know what was going to happen until it was too late. That's a lie. Maybe. But it's a lie that might work. He's 22, no prior complaints. First assignment out of training. The defense is painting him as a victim, too. Mara processed this. Webb had been the weak link from the beginning. The one who laughed a beat too late. The one who looked scared even while participating. Now he was trying to flip the narrative. What about Briggs and Cole? They're holding the line with Vance, claiming the whole thing was a misunderstanding, claiming you attacked them without provocation. The video shows otherwise. The video is being contested. Chain of custody issues. The defense is saying it could have been edited. Mara felt the familiar tightness in her chest. The system was doing what it always did, protecting itself, creating doubt, making victims prove their trauma over and over while perpetrators hid behind technicalities. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "No," Duvall agreed. "It's not." That night, Mara received another message. Not a threat this time. A name. Colonel James Harker, Pentagon liaison. He's the one protecting Vance's family. Look deeper. She stared at the message for a long time. Vance's family. She'd read his file a dozen times. Father deceased. Mother in assisted living. No siblings. But there was a stepfather mentioned in passing. A man who had married Vance's mother when Derek was 15. A man who had helped launch his military career. She pulled up the records and started digging. Colonel James Harker, 30 years of service, currently assigned to congressional liaison at the Pentagon. The man who connected the military to lawmakers. The man who controlled information flow between the armed forces and the politicians who funded them. And according to a marriage certificate from 23 years ago, Derek Vance's stepfather, the senator who had called Admiral Shaw, the one asking about unauthorized investigations and inter-service protocols. He hadn't been asking out of curiosity. He'd been asking because someone at the Pentagon had told him to. Mara picked up her secure phone and dialed. "Admiral Shaw, we have a problem." Admiral Shaw arrived at Mara's office within the hour. Her face was tight with controlled fury as she reviewed the documents Mara had assembled. Marriage certificates, transfer records, phone logs showing calls between Colonel Harker's Pentagon office and JSOTC command, including 3 calls to Pruitt in the week before Mara's arrival. "He knew," Shaw said quietly. "Harker knew you were coming before you ever set foot on this base." Pruitt was warned. That's why they accelerated their timeline with me. They weren't hunting randomly that night. They were trying to neutralize me before I could gather evidence. And when that failed, Harker activated his political connections to undermine the investigation. "The senator who called you, he's on the Armed Services Committee. Harker has direct access to him through his liaison position." When Shaw set down the documents. "This goes higher than I thought. Harker isn't just protecting his stepson. He's protecting himself. If Vance goes down, questions get asked. How did a serial predator rise through the ranks without consequence? Who enabled him? Who looked the other way? Harker did, for 20 years. And he's not going to let that come out without a fight." Mara leaned forward. "What can we do?" "Officially, nothing. Harker outranks me. He has political cover. Any direct move against him would be seen as overreach. And unofficially," Shaw's eyes met hers, "unofficially, we need to make his protection worthless. We need the case against Vance to be so airtight that no amount of political pressure can make it disappear. The defense is already undermining our evidence. Chain of custody issues, claims of entrapment, Webb flipping to their side. Then we need more evidence. We need witnesses who can't be discredited. We need documentation that can't be contested. Pruitt gave us names. Pruitt is a compromised witness. His testimony will be attacked as self-serving." Mara thought for a moment. "The women who were pushed out. Duvall said 3 of them have contacted investigators. But there were 23 total. If we can find more of them, if we can build a pattern that spans years and multiple commands. Harker can't protect against a systemic failure, not if it's documented across facilities he had no connection to. But he did have connections. I found transfer orders in Pruitt's files. 6 of the women who left JSOTC were reassigned to facilities where Harker had oversight authority. He wasn't just protecting Vance here. He was managing the fallout everywhere." Shaw's expression hardened. "He was cleaning up. For years. Every time Vance created a problem, Harker made it disappear. Transfers, quiet separations, Medical discharges that conveniently removed complainants from the system. If we can prove that pattern, we can prove conspiracy, not just at JSOTC, across the entire chain of command. Shaw stood abruptly. I need to make some calls. Stay here. Don't talk to anyone until I get back. She left. Mara sat alone with the weight of what she'd uncovered pressing down on her shoulders. This wasn't just about 4 men in a weapons vault anymore. This was about a colonel at the Pentagon who had spent 2 decades protecting a predator. A system that rewarded silence and punished truth. A network of complicity that stretched from a desert training facility to the halls of power in Washington. And she was one person standing against all of it. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered. Master Chief Sinclair. The voice was male, calm, authoritative. This is Colonel James Harker. Mara's grip tightened on the phone. I know who you are. Good. Then you know I'm not someone who makes idle threats. Is that what this call is, a threat? This call is an opportunity. A chance for you to understand the situation before you make decisions you can't take back. I'm listening. You've done impressive work. Truly. Taking down 4 men in hand-to-hand combat, building a case against Pruitt, uncovering patterns that others missed. You're talented. The kind of talent that gets noticed. Get to the point. The point is that talent can be rewarded or destroyed. It depends entirely on how that talent is directed. You're offering me something. I'm offering you perspective. You think you're fighting for justice. You think exposing my stepson and his associates will make the military safer for women. But what you're actually doing is threatening the careers of dozens of good officers who made difficult judgment calls in complex situations. Difficult judgment calls, 23 women were pushed out of their careers. 2 are dead. People die in the military, Master Chief. People wash out. That's the nature of service. Not everyone is cut out for this life. Elena Vasquez wasn't washed out. She was driven to suicide by a system that refused to protect her. Elena Vasquez had pre-existing mental health vulnerabilities that were exacerbated by the stresses of training. Her death was tragic, but not criminal. Her death was murder. Slow, institutional murder committed by people who told her that no one would believe her. Harker's voice cooled. You're emotional, I understand. But emotion doesn't change facts. And the facts are that you have a choice to make. What choice? You can pursue this investigation to its end. Watch it get mired in legal challenges. Watch the evidence get suppressed. Watch my stepson walk free because his attorneys are better than your prosecutors. And then watch your own career destroyed by the people you've made enemies of. Or you can accept that you've made your point. The investigation has exposed problems at JSOTC. Changes will be made. Pruitt is gone. The culture will improve. You can take credit for that victory and move on to your next assignment with commendations instead of investigations. And Vance, Derek will receive administrative discipline. Transfer to a non-combat role. Mandatory counseling. His career will be effectively over without the spectacle of a court-martial. That's not justice. That's reality. Justice is what powerful people decide it is. I'm offering you a version of justice that lets everyone walk away with something. Mara closed her eyes. She could hear the calculation in his voice. The certainty that she would take the deal because everyone took the deal. Because fighting the system was exhausting and thankless and usually ended in defeat. Because he had won this fight 100 times before. Colonel Harker. Yes? I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Your stepson is going to prison. Your name is going to be attached to every news story about this case, every promotion board you've ever influenced, every transfer you've ever facilitated, every complaint you've ever buried is going to be examined under a microscope. I'm not finished. You've spent 20 years protecting a predator because he had your last name. You've destroyed women's careers to preserve your family's reputation. You've used your position to obstruct justice and enable abuse. And now you think you can make one phone call and make it all go away. You're making a mistake. No. You made the mistake. You made it when you assumed I could be bought. You made it when you assumed I was alone. And you made it when you assumed that women in this military would stay silent forever because powerful men told them to. Sinclair, this call is over. The next time we speak, it will be in a courtroom. She hung up. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. 20 years. 20 years of protection. 20 years of women being processed out of their careers like defective equipment. 20 years of silence enforced by power. And Harker thought one phone call would make her back down. She picked up her secure phone and dialed Admiral Shaw. He just contacted me directly. Harker offered me a deal. Walk away and let Vance take administrative discipline instead of court-martial. What did you tell him? I told him no. Good. Shaw's voice carried something that might have been pride. Because I just got off the phone with the Secretary of the Navy. He's been briefed on Harker's involvement. As of 20 minutes ago, Colonel Harker is under investigation for obstruction of justice and abuse of authority. Mara exhaled slowly. They're actually going after him. They don't have a choice. The documentation you found, the call logs, the transfer patterns, it's too clear to ignore. Harker overplayed his hand when he contacted that senator. Now there's a paper trail. What about the case against Vance? The case proceeds, but now it's not just about 4 men in a vault. It's about a systematic failure of command accountability. Congressional oversight is getting involved. The Secretary of Defense has been notified. This is going to get very loud. It already is. News networks are starting to pick up the story. Anonymous sources are leaking details. By tomorrow morning, JSOTC is going to be on every front page in the country. Mara thought about Duval, about the 3 women who had come forward, about the 20 others who hadn't yet. The witnesses. They're going to be exposed. We're arranging protection, secure interviews, no names released without consent. And Harker's people, they're going to come after anyone who talks. Let them try. As of now, this investigation has protection at the highest levels. Anyone who attempts to intimidate witnesses will be adding charges to their own file. It's still not enough. What do you mean? I mean that investigations take time. Court-martials take longer. Appeals drag on for years. Meanwhile, Harker has resources. Vance has family money. They can afford attorneys who specialize in delay tactics. What are you suggesting? Mara made her decision. I'm suggesting we take control of the narrative before they do. The news networks are already interested. Let's give them something to report. You want to go public? I want the witnesses to go public, on their terms, with their stories, before the defense has time to prepare counter-narratives. Shaw was silent for a long moment. That's risky. Public testimony can be used against witnesses in court. Defense attorneys will claim they were seeking attention rather than justice. Defense attorneys will claim that anyway. But if 20 women tell the same story, if the pattern is undeniable, if the American public sees what happened, no amount of legal maneuvering will save them. You're talking about a media campaign. I'm talking about accountability, the kind that doesn't depend on prosecutors or judges or political appointees, the kind that happens when people see the truth and refuse to look away. Shaw's voice softened. You understand this will make you a target. Not just professionally. Personally. Your face will be everywhere. Your life will be examined. Your enemies will try to destroy you. They're already trying to destroy me. At least this way I get to choose the battlefield. Another long pause. I'll make some calls. There are journalists I trust. People who've covered military justice issues fairly. If we're going to do this, we do it right. Agreed. And Sinclair, once this starts, there's no going back. You'll never have a quiet career again. Mara looked out the window at the base where she'd arrived as a nobody 3 weeks ago. I never wanted a quiet career. I wanted to make a difference. You already have. This just makes sure it lasts. Shaw hung up. Mara sat in the silence, feeling the weight of what she'd just set in motion. In 48 hours, her face would be on national news. Her name would be in every headline. Her life would become public property, examined and debated by strangers who had never worn a uniform. But so would the truth. So would the names of the women who had been silenced. The stories that had been buried. The system that had protected predators while punishing their victims. For the first time since she'd arrived at JSOTC, Mara felt something that wasn't anger or determination. She felt hope. Not hope that the system would fix itself. It wouldn't. Systems never did. But hope that the people who had been hurt by that system might finally be heard. Might finally be believed. Might finally see the men who had tormented them face real consequences. That was worth any price, even if the price was everything. The first interview aired 3 days later. Specialist Kennedy Duvall sat in front of cameras and told her story to 30 million viewers. She described the night she was lured to the weapons vault, the faces of the men who waited for her, the terror of realizing she was trapped. And she named names. Vance, Cole, Briggs, Webb, Pruitt, Harker. The phone lines at the network lit up within minutes, other women calling with their own stories, some from JSOTC, some from other facilities, some who had left the military years ago and never told anyone what happened. Mara watched from a secure location as Duvall finished her interview. I was told that no one would believe me, Duvall said, looking directly into the camera. I was told that reporting would destroy my career. I was told that the men who did this were protected, that nothing would ever happen to them. She paused. I believed that for a long time. I believed it because the system taught me to believe it. But now I know something different. I know that silence only protects the people who hurt us, and I'm done being silent. The anchor asked one final question. What do you want people to understand about what happened to you? Duvall's eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. I want them to understand that this isn't about one facility or one group of men. This is about a culture that tells women to endure, to adapt, to protect reputations instead of ourselves. I want them to understand that every time a complaint gets buried, every time a predator gets transferred instead of punished, another woman pays the price. And what would you say to other women who might be watching right now, women who have experienced similar things? Duvall looked directly into the camera. You are not alone. You are not crazy. What happened to you was wrong, and you did not deserve it. And there are people who will fight for you, who will believe you, who will not stop until the people who hurt you face justice. She took a breath. Don't let them silence you. Not anymore. The interview ended. Mara turned off the television. Her phone was already buzzing with messages. More witnesses coming forward. More evidence being submitted. More cracks appearing in the wall of silence that had protected predators for decades. Harker had been relieved of duty pending investigation. Vance's attorneys had withdrawn from the case, citing irreconcilable differences with their client. Pruitt's plea deal had fallen apart after 3 more women came forward with allegations against him directly. And in a small apartment in Phoenix, Elena Vasquez's mother was watching the news for the first time since her daughter's death, crying tears that were equal parts grief and something that might have been vindication. The fight wasn't over, but the silence was broken. And nothing would ever be the same. 3 months passed. The court-martial of Sergeant First Class Derek Vance began on a Tuesday morning with television cameras lining the entrance to the military courthouse and protesters holding signs on both sides of the street. Mara sat in the gallery wearing her dress uniform for the first time since arriving at JSOTC. Her seal trident gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Her ribbons told a story that most people in the room couldn't read but instinctively respected. 37 witnesses had been called to testify. 37 women who had encountered Vance Cole Briggs or members of their network over the past decade. Some had been assaulted. Some had been harassed. Some had simply been forced out of careers they'd worked years to build. All of them had been told the same thing. Stay silent. Protect the unit. No one will believe you anyway. None of them were silent anymore. The prosecution called its first witness. Specialist Kennedy Duvall took the stand with her shoulders squared and her voice steady. She had practiced this moment 100 times, but nothing could fully prepare her for the weight of 37 pairs of eyes watching her from the gallery. The prosecutor Commander Angela Torres approached the witness box. Specialist Duvall, please describe the events of September 14th of last year. Duvall began speaking. She described the fake schedule change, the walk to the weapons vault, the moment she realized she wasn't alone, the faces of the men who surrounded her, the words they used, the hands that reached for her. The courtroom was absolutely silent. When she finished, Torres asked a single question. Specialist Duvall, why didn't you report this incident immediately? Duvall's voice cracked for the first time. Because I was told that reporting would end my career. Because I watched other women report and disappear. Because Command Sergeant Major Pruitt looked me in the eye and told me that nothing would happen to them and everything would happen to me. What changed? Duvall looked across the courtroom to where Mara sat. Someone showed me that silence wasn't protection, it was permission. Permission for them to keep doing what they'd always done. The defense attorney stood for cross-examination. His name was Colonel Richard Ashworth, a military defense specialist with 30 years of experience and a reputation for destroying witnesses. He approached Duvall slowly. Specialist Duvall, you testified that you were lured to the weapons vault under false pretenses. Yes. But you have no proof that the defendant sent that message, do you? The email came from his account. Emails can be spoofed. Accounts can be hacked. Do you have any direct evidence that Sergeant Vance personally typed and sent that message? Duvall hesitated. No. And when you arrived at the weapons vault, was the defendant the first person to touch you? No. Cole grabbed me first. So the defendant never actually laid hands on you. He was there. He was in charge. He told the others what to do. Did you hear him give specific instructions to assault you? He said fresh meat, no connections. Perfect. He knew what was going to happen. That speculation specialist. Did you hear him say the words assault her, or attack her, or anything similar? He didn't have to say those exact words. Please answer yes or no. Did you hear the defendant give explicit instructions to assault you? Duvall's jaw tightened. No. Ashworth nodded as if he'd proven something significant. No further questions. Torres stood for redirect. Specialist Duvall, when the defendant said fresh meat, no connections, perfect, what did you understand that to mean? I understood that they had identified me as a target. Someone new, isolated without support systems that would ask questions if something happened. And in your experience at JSOTC, had you observed the defendant using similar language about other women? Yes, multiple times. It was how they selected victims. Thank you. No further questions. Duval stepped down. 23 witnesses followed over the next 2 weeks. Each one told a variation of the same story. Different faces, different facilities, different years. But the same pattern, the same language, the same systematic protection of predators by people who should have protected them. Staff Sergeant Yolanda Price described being cornered in a supply closet by Cole in 2019. She had reported it. Pruitt had called it a misunderstanding. 3 weeks later, she was transferred to a facility in Alaska. Sergeant First Class Diana Okonkwo described Vance's attempts to isolate her from her unit in 2020, when she resisted rumors began circulating about her competence. She requested reassignment before the rumors destroyed her career. Corporal Amanda Reyes broke down on the stand while describing an assault that had happened during a night training exercise in 2021. She had been medically discharged for anxiety 6 weeks later. The doctor who signed her discharge papers had been recommended by Pruitt. One by one they testified. One by one they shattered the wall of silence. And then came the day Mara took the stand. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled. Overflow crowds watching on monitors in adjacent rooms. Media representatives had been granted limited access for the first time in the trial. Mara walked to the witness box with the same controlled calm she'd carried into the weapons vault 3 months earlier. Torres approached. Master Chief Sinclair, please describe your assignment at JSOTC. I was sent undercover to investigate reports of systematic harassment and assault of female service members. My orders came from Naval Special Warfare Command with authorization from the Office of the Secretary of Defense. And what did you discover during your investigation? I discovered a pattern of predatory behavior that had been allowed to continue for over 4 years. I discovered that complaints were being buried, witnesses were being transferred, and commanding officers were being protected by senior leadership. Did you identify specific individuals responsible for this pattern? Yes. The primary predators were Sergeant First Class Derek Vance, staff, Sergeant Marcus Cole, Specialist Tyler Briggs, and Sergeant Nathan Webb. They were enabled by Command Sergeant Major Harold Pruitt, who handled complaints in ways that protected perpetrators rather than victims. And did you discover anyone above Pruitt who was involved? Yes. Colonel James Harker, assigned to Congressional Liaison at the Pentagon, had been facilitating cover-ups for over 2 decades. He is the defendant's stepfather. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Please describe the events of the night you were attacked. Mara recounted it simply. The fake email, the weapons vault, the 4 men waiting, the words they used. The moment Cole grabbed her. And then what came next? I neutralized the threats using techniques consistent with my training. 4 hostiles were incapacitated in approximately 45 seconds. And you recorded the entire encounter. The defendant recorded it. I secured his phone as evidence. Torres turned to the judge. The prosecution would like to enter into evidence the unedited video recovered from Specialist Briggs's phone. The video played. 47 minutes of footage. The 4 men entering. The verbal threats. Ruiz grabbing Mara. The systematic takedown that followed. And then Vance's voice, clear and unmistakable. Scream all you want. No one's coming. When the video ended, the courtroom was silent. Torres asked one final question. Master Chief Sinclair, why did you allow yourself to be placed in that situation? You knew it was a trap. Mara looked at the prosecutor then at the gallery, then at the defendant. Because pattern evidence isn't enough. Because testimony can be discredited. Because the only way to stop predators who operate in darkness is to shine a light so bright that no one can look away. No further questions. Ashworth approached for cross-examination. His demeanor had changed since the video played. The confidence was still there, but something underneath it had shifted. Master Chief Sinclair, you've testified that you went to that weapons vault knowing it was a trap. Correct. So you deliberately placed yourself in a situation where you anticipated being attacked. I placed myself in a situation where I anticipated the defendant and his associates would reveal their true intentions. Isn't that entrapment? Entrapment is when law enforcement induces someone to commit a crime they wouldn't otherwise commit. I didn't induce anyone. I simply gave them an opportunity to do what they had been doing for years. But you were armed with surveillance equipment. You were prepared to defend yourself with deadly force. You weren't a victim, Master Chief. You were a hunter. I was a woman alone in a room with 4 men who had cornered, threatened, and attempted to assault me. My preparation doesn't change what they did. You broke Staff Sergeant Cole's wrist in 3 places. His career as an operator is over. Staff Sergeant Cole grabbed me first. His injuries resulted from his resistance to a control technique. A control technique that you as a SEAL knew could cause permanent damage. A control technique that I used to prevent myself from being raped. The word landed like a bomb. Ashworth flinched. Master Chief. That's what this is about, Counselor. Not procedure, not technique, not proportional force. 4 men cornered a woman with the intent to sexually assault her. I stopped them. Everything else is noise. Ashworth stood in silence for a long moment. No further questions. Mara stepped down. The closing arguments took 2 days. Torres built her case methodically. The pattern of behavior, the systematic cover-ups, the testimony of 37 witnesses, the video evidence that showed exactly what Vance and his crew intended to do. Ashworth argued procedure, chain of custody, potential entrapment, the lack of explicit verbal instructions to commit assault. The panel deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the courtroom fell silent. The senior member of the panel stood. On the charge of attempted sexual assault, we find the defendant Sergeant First Class Derek Vance, guilty. Mara closed her eyes. On the charge of conspiracy to commit sexual assault, guilty. On the charge of conduct unbecoming a non-commissioned officer, guilty. On the charge of obstruction of justice, guilty. 4 counts. 4 guilty verdicts. The sentencing came 3 days later. 15 years confinement. Dishonorable discharge. Forfeiture of all pay and benefits. Reduction to the lowest enlisted rank. Derek Vance would leave the military as a convicted felon with nothing. Cole received 12 years. Briggs received 8. Webb, who had cooperated with prosecutors and testified against the others, received 3 years and a chance at rehabilitation. Pruitt pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice and received 20 years. And Colonel James Harker, whose connections had once seemed untouchable, was court-martialed for conspiracy obstruction and abuse of authority. He received a sentence of 25 years and was stripped of his rank, his pension, and his legacy. The system that had protected predators for decades was dismantled, 1 conviction at a time. 2 weeks after the sentencing, Mara flew to Phoenix. She had made a promise to Colonel Webb on the night the investigation began. A promise to tell Elena Vasquez's family what had really happened to their daughter. Rosa Vasquez lived in a small house on the east side of the city. She was 63 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes, and the kind of quiet dignity that came from surviving things that should have broken her. Mara knocked on the door. Rosa opened it and stared at her for a long moment. You're the one from the news. The SEAL. Yes, ma'am. My name is Mara Sinclair. I was hoping we could talk about Elena. Rosa stepped aside to let her in. They sat in a living room filled with photographs. Elena in her uniform. Elena at graduation. Elena as a child, smiling at the camera with the kind of innocence that the world hadn't yet stripped away. She wanted to be just like you, Rosa said quietly. Strong, capable, the kind of woman who could do anything. She was strong. What happened to her wasn't because she was weak. I know that now. I didn't always. Rosa's voice cracked. When she died, they told me it was mental illness. They told me she couldn't handle the pressure. I believed them because I didn't know what else to believe. They lied to you. They lied to protect the men who hurt her. I watched the trial. I heard the testimony. Rosa looked at Mara with eyes that held more pain than anyone should have to carry. She tried to tell me something was wrong. In her last phone call, she said she felt trapped, that no one would help her. I told her to be strong, to push through. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have heard what she wasn't saying. Mara leaned forward. Mrs. Vasquez, your daughter did everything right. She reported. She followed procedure. She trusted the system to protect her. The system failed. Not Elena. The system. Rosa wiped her eyes. Will it change? Will it be different now? I don't know. I hope so. But I know that because of Elena, because of what happened to her, people are paying attention. Policies are being rewritten. Training is being overhauled. Her death means something. It shouldn't have had to mean anything. She should still be alive. Yes, she should. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Rosa spoke again. Thank you for not letting them bury her story with her. Mara reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. I want you to have this. Rosa opened it. Inside was a Navy SEAL trident, Mara's trident, the one she had earned through years of training that had nearly killed her, the symbol of everything she had become. I can't accept this. Elena earned it. She fought back the only way she knew how. She survived as long as she could, and when she couldn't survive anymore, she left a note that told the truth. Mara closed Rosa's fingers around the box. This belongs to her now, and to every woman who was told to stay silent and chose to speak anyway. Rosa held the trident to her chest and wept. Mara stayed until the tears stopped. Then she walked out into the Arizona sun and got in her car. Her phone buzzed. A message from Admiral Shaw. New assignment. Briefing at 0800 tomorrow. Well done, Ghost Eye. Mara looked at the message for a long moment. The fight at JSOTC was over. But the war wasn't. There were other facilities, other predators, other systems that protected the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. And Mara Sinclair would find them, one by one, no matter how long it took. She started the engine and drove toward the airport. Behind her, in a small house in Phoenix, Rosa Vasquez placed a SEAL trident on her daughter's memorial and finally allowed herself to believe that her death had not been in vain. The sun set over the desert, and somewhere in the military justice system, a message was spreading. The silence was over. The reckoning had begun. And the women who had been told to obey, to submit, to accept their place in a system designed to break them, were finally being heard. Not because the system had changed, because one woman had refused to be silent. One woman had walked into darkness and emerged with proof that could not be ignored. One woman had shown them what happened when predators mistook patience for weakness and silence for surrender. They had told her to obey. She had shown them what happens when a warrior strikes back. Now, it's your turn. What would you have done in her position? Would you have taken the deal and walked away? Would you have risked everything to expose the truth? And do you think the military has done enough to protect the women who serve? Or is there still more work to be done? Drop your answers in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button if this story made you feel something. Share it with someone who needs to hear that speaking up matters. Because silence only protects the people who hurt us. And some women refuse to be silent. I'll see you in the next one.